The ER doors burst open at 2 a.m. A grease-stained single dad carrying his son who couldn't breathe. His wallet held $10. His eyes held nothing but fear. Nurses rushed past him until a billionaire widow in heels stopped, sat beside him, and whispered 6 words that would change everything. If stories like this remind you that kindness can still rewrite a life, stay with us and share it with someone who might need hope tonight. The fluorescent lights in the ER flickered like tired stars, humming over the linoleum floor. It was 2 a.m., that strange hour when the world feels both endless and small. Ethan Miller sat slumped against the wall outside room 12, his hands stained faintly with engine grease that no soap could quite erase. The scent of disinfectant and cold metal filled the air. A vending machine whirred behind him, spitting out the same lukewarm water he couldn't afford to buy twice. His son, 8-year-old Caleb, was fighting for breath inside. The wheeze had started at dinner. Innocent at first, then sharp, desperate. By the time Ethan reached the emergency room, Caleb's chest was rattling like a loose part in an engine about to seize. Now he sat alone, watching the clock's red digits crawl, clutching his son's hospital wristband like a prayer bead. The nurse had said something about insurance verification. Then she'd vanished behind the glass door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." His wallet was open on his lap, and the last bill, a crumpled 20, stared back at him. He'd spent the rest on an inhaler refill last week. "I'm sorry, buddy," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Daddy should have been faster." He tried to breathe the way Caleb did through his machine, slow, measured, but the air wouldn't go down. He rubbed his temples, head bowed, whispering the same thing his late wife used to tell him whenever life cornered them. "Don't fall apart in front of the kid." But the kid wasn't there now, and Ethan's armor, grit, jokes, exhaustion was finally giving way. The hallway around him was quiet, except for the echo of distant monitors and the squeak of nurses' shoes. He didn't hear the woman until she sat down beside him, not across from him, not hovering like the others who passed by pretending not to see him, but beside him, close enough that her perfume, a faint mix of lavender and rain, cut through the sterile air. "You look like you could use this," she said softly. A paper cup appeared in his peripheral vision. Steam rose from it. Hot cocoa, not coffee. Ethan blinked, confused. She was maybe in her early 50s, hair silver at the temples, the kind of face that carried both grace and gravity. Her coat was cashmere but worn, edges frayed from real use. A gray scarf lay around her shoulders, its fibers slightly unraveled, like something with a story. "I didn't order," he started, but his voice cracked halfway through. "It's not an order," she interrupted gently, "just something warm to hold." Her tone wasn't pitying, and that somehow broke him more than kindness ever could. He accepted the cup, fingers brushing hers. Her hands were steady. His trembled. They sat in silence for a long moment. The clock on the wall ticked toward 2:17. Finally, she spoke again. 6 simple words, said slowly, like a truth she'd been saving. "You don't have to be alone." Ethan froze. He looked up, eyes stinging, throat tightening. For a heartbeat. He saw his wife Lena sitting beside him the way she used to, whispering those exact words during Caleb's first asthma attack years ago. He had never told anyone that phrase, not once. Yet here it was, falling from the lips of a stranger. What did you just say?" he whispered. The woman didn't flinch. "Sometimes," she said quietly, "it's the hardest thing, letting someone sit beside you." Her eyes were clear, ocean gray, the kind that had seen grief and stayed standing. She reached into her purse, pulled out a tissue, and handed it to him like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I'm Amelia," she added simply. "Amelia Grant." The name carried weight, though he couldn't place it. Maybe he'd seen it in the news, maybe on a donation plaque at the hospital entrance. He didn't ask. He couldn't. He just nodded, voice thick. Ethan. Ethan, she repeated softly, as if testing how the name felt in her mouth. Your son, he's in there? Caleb, he said. Asthma. They're still running tests. She nodded, eyes dropping briefly to the hospital wristband in his hand. He's lucky to have a father who doesn't leave the hallway. Ethan gave a weak laugh. Feels like I leave too much lately. Then maybe tonight, she said, you can just stay. Her words didn't fix anything. Not the bills, not the fear, but they steadied him. The hum of the ER faded, and for the first time in hours, he realized he wasn't shaking. He sipped the cocoa. It was too sweet, but the warmth went straight to his chest. Beside him, Amelia didn't speak again. She just stayed. Outside, rain pressed against the dark windows, and the world narrowed to a single hallway. 2 people, and 6 words that somehow carried the weight of mercy. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He sat in the stiff plastic chair outside Caleb's room, the cocoa cup now empty and cool between his palms. Through the glass panel, he could see his son's small chest rising and falling under the steady rhythm of the oxygen mask. Each breath was a victory. Each pause was a threat. Amelia hadn't left. She'd shifted to the next chair, reading something on her phone but glancing up every few minutes, as if to make sure he was still breathing too. At dawn, the light changed, gray sliding toward gold. The night nurse switched shifts, and the ER began to stir again with the hum of new emergencies. Ethan rubbed his eyes, feeling that familiar ache behind them. He didn't know how to talk to people like her. She seemed calm, composed, like she'd never had to count coins before buying medicine. But she also looked tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep could fix. You didn't have to stay, he said quietly. I know, she answered. That's why I did. Her voice had that simple conviction that made him stop arguing. For the first time, she smiled. A small, genuine thing that caught him off guard. He looks like you, she added. The boy. Ethan followed her gaze. His mom used to say that. Lena. He swallowed hard at her name. She was the strong one. I just kept the car running. What happened to her? Amelia's tone was careful, not prying. Ethan's fingers tightened around the paper cup. Cancer. 3 years ago. I worked 2 jobs to cover the treatments. Thought I had time to fix everything. His voice thinned. But you never do you? Time runs faster when you're trying to stop it. Amelia looked down at her hands. She wasn't wearing a wedding ring, just a simple silver band on a chain around her neck. My husband, Richard, she said softly, was gone before I could tell him goodbye. Stroke. He was larger than life. Everyone wanted a piece of him. The press, the foundation, the board. But I only wanted one more conversation. Never got it. Their eyes met for a brief, fragile moment. Loss recognized loss. The silence between them felt like shared ground rather than distance. So, Ethan said, voice rough, you just come to hospitals now? Help strangers fall apart? Amelia's lips curved faintly. Something like that. Richard started a foundation for medical access before he died. I try to visit the hospitals it supports. Tonight wasn't planned. She paused, the faintest tremor in her breath. But maybe it was meant. She reached into her bag, drew out a small folded paper, edges soft, crease lines worn from years of being opened and closed. She turned it over once before speaking. Can I show you something? Ethan nodded cautiously. She handed it to him. The paper was yellowed, the ink faded, but the handwriting was familiar. His heart stuttered. Wait, this... Lena wrote it, Amelia said gently. I met her at the oncology ward 3 years ago. She was sitting by the window, drawing sunlight on the floor with her fingers. I used to visit the chemo wing to read to patients when I could. She recognized me from a magazine photo and teased that billionaires probably didn't belong around IV poles. We laughed. Ethan's eyes filled. She never told me. She said she didn't want you worrying. She talked about you and Caleb, about how you never gave up. She gave me that paper before she left one afternoon. Said, "If you ever see a man break like I know he will someday, give him this," and say these words out loud. Amelia's voice broke slightly. She wrote them down so I wouldn't forget. You don't have to be alone. Ethan pressed the paper to his forehead, breathing as though the air itself might tear him apart. The edges of the letter blurred in his tears. Lena's handwriting, curling loops, precise, always patient, felt like a voice reaching through time. You've been carrying this? Every day, Amelia said. Because those words saved me too. I was drowning in grief after Richard died. Her kindness anchored me. Ethan looked at her, really looked. Behind the wealth, the tailored coat, the calm voice, there was someone else, a woman who'd lost her compass but kept walking anyway. Why me? He whispered. Why come back tonight? Amelia gave a faint, almost disbelieving laugh. I don't know. My driver took a wrong turn. I saw the ER sign and told him to stop. Maybe the universe remembered a promise I'd forgotten. They sat together, the letter between them like a fragile bridge. The nurse came to update him. Caleb's breathing had stabilized. Relief crashed through Ethan so hard it almost hurt. He's going to be okay, he murmured, half to himself. Amelia touched the paper, then his hand. Then maybe it's time you start being okay too. He looked at her, unsure how. She smiled faintly. One small repair at a time, Mr. Miller. You fix engines. Start with yourself. For the first time in 3 years, Ethan didn't feel like a man waiting for something to break. By mid-morning, the hum of the hospital had settled into a fragile calm. The smell of antiseptic mixed with burnt coffee and faint lavender from Amelia's scarf. Caleb was resting comfortably now in the pediatric ICU, a breathing monitor tracing soft green lines across the screen. Ethan stood beside the glass, watching his boy's tiny fingers twitch in sleep. He looked older than his 8 years, maybe worry-aged children too. A nurse mentioned Caleb's insurance file had been flagged for temporary denial due to coding discrepancy. The words sounded harmless, bureaucratic, but they hit Ethan like a punch. He'd been through this before. Hours of calls, forms lost, promises to escalate the case. Every minute felt like theft from his son's recovery. He slumped into the chair again, head in his hands. I can't afford another delay. Amelia, who had been quietly sipping tea nearby, set her cup down. What kind of discrepancy? He gave a hollow laugh. The kind where a missing signature means your kid waits to breathe. She didn't speak for a moment, just took out her phone and typed something quickly. You work with engines, right? She asked suddenly. He nodded, confused. Then you understand systems. This one's just another kind of machine. Badly maintained, overcomplicated, but fixable. She stood, walked to the hallway window, and made a brief call. Her tone stayed calm, clipped, professional, every word deliberate. Good morning, I need the Director of Claims Review. Yes, this is Amelia Grant. No, don't put me on hold. Ethan blinked. He didn't know anyone could talk to insurance that way. Within minutes, she'd connected 2 departments and requested an immediate review of all pediatric denials logged under temporary hold. When she hung up, she looked at him. It wasn't charity, she said softly. Just removing friction from the gears. Her use of his language, machines, friction, made him smile despite himself. You're something else, he murmured. I've been called worse. She smiled faintly, then grew thoughtful. You said you fix engines. Do you remember a pickup truck, old red model, rusted edges, about a year ago? Owner was a grumpy old man who refused to pay more than $1. Ethan frowned. Yeah, that guy. He said it was a test of honesty. I thought he was nuts. I charged him $1 just so he'd stop arguing. He left this behind. Ethan pulled from his jacket pocket a tarnished pocket watch, its cover etched with the initials. Never could return it. Package came back undeliverable. Amelia's breath caught. She reached for the watch, fingertips trembling. "RG," she whispered. "Richard Grant. My husband." The world seemed to pause. Ethan's eyes widened. "You're telling me?" "Yes," she said, voice breaking. "He used to drive that truck when he wanted to escape the boardrooms. Said it reminded him of who he was before the headlines. He must have met you during one of those drives." Ethan sat back, stunned. He said he was testing honesty? "He was dying," Amelia said quietly. "He wanted to know there were still decent people in the world, people who helped without expecting anything back. When he came home that day, he told me, 'I met a man who fixed my truck for $1. Remember his name, Millie. One day he'll need help.'" Ethan's throat closed. The watch suddenly felt heavy in his hands. "Your husband paid for Lena's last treatment," he realized. "I didn't know who it came from. I just got a check from an anonymous donor." Amelia nodded. "That was Richard. I never knew your face until tonight." The pieces fit together with eerie precision. The pickup, the folded letter, the 6 words. He felt dizzy with it, as if fate had been quietly soldering connections while he wasn't looking. "I don't take charity," Ethan said, half out of pride, half reflex. "It wasn't charity," Amelia replied. "It was reciprocity. He fixed engines, you fixed his faith. Tonight, I'm just finishing the circuit." She smiled sadly. "You and I, we're both repairers. Different tools, same job." They sat in silence, the ticking of the pocket watch filling the room. Ethan turned it over, noticing something he'd missed before. A tiny engraving beneath the initials. "For the ones who keep things running." His voice was soft. "He really said to remember me?" "Every day," Amelia said. "He kept that $1 in his desk drawer until the end." Ethan exhaled slowly, a mix of awe and grief. "Guess he did his final good deed early." "No," Amelia said. "He left it unfinished. That's why I'm here." Outside the ICU window, the morning light grew stronger, cutting through the sterile blue. The world beyond the glass didn't look so cold anymore. Amelia leaned back in her chair, eyes on Caleb's steady breathing. "When he wakes," she said, "I want to show you something at the foundation. There's a whole system like that engine of yours, stalled, clogged, and waiting for someone who knows how to listen to it." Ethan gave a low, incredulous laugh. "You want me to fix a hospital system?" "Not the whole thing," she said. "Just the parts that keep people like you waiting alone." He didn't answer, but in the reflection of the ICU window, his tired face almost looked like a man beginning to believe again. The following night bled into dawn without anyone noticing. The ER had its own rhythm, steady, mechanical, like breathing underwater. Ethan was dozing in the chair when a sound jolted him awake. A nurse shouting for respiratory support. Through the glass of Caleb's room, he saw doctors rush in, lights flash red across the monitor. His son's chest was tightening again, body arching against the oxygen mask. Ethan's heart stopped. He lunged for the door, but a nurse blocked him gently. "Let them work," she said firmly. "He's in good hands." That phrase, "good hands," had lost its meaning for Ethan years ago. His knees buckled. He gripped the doorframe, gasping. "Please," he whispered. "He's all I've got." Within minutes, the crisis team stabilized Caleb. The doctor emerged, eyes tired but kind. "We've adjusted his medication. He's responding, but we'll need to switch him to the new protocol." Ethan exhaled shakily, until the doctor added, "We'll have to wait for the insurance override to approve the new medication. It might take a few hours." He felt the world tilt again. A few hours? His voice rose, panic cracking through. He could crash again. We're doing everything we can, the doctor assured him, already moving on to another patient. Amelia appeared at his side, calm in a way that only comes from having already lost everything once. Come with me, she said quietly. We're not waiting on a form to decide his breath. In the waiting room, she took out her phone again, her posture precise as a surgeon's. This is Amelia Grant, she told the receptionist who answered. I need an expedited medical necessity override for pediatric case number 0471B. Yes, I'll hold. But not long. Ethan watched in disbelief as she cut through bureaucratic layers with the same authority he used when diagnosing an engine misfire. She didn't yell or threaten. She just spoke their language. Codes, clauses, precedents. Section 4B, Subpart 2, she said into the phone. Expedited review for critical pediatric care. You're empowered to approve it under provisional clause. Yes, that one. Check your manual. When she hung up, she looked at Ethan. It'll be cleared in 10 minutes. He was speechless. How did you even... I've sat on too many hospital boards not to learn their tricks, she said dryly. You shouldn't have to fight this hard for your child. Ethan rubbed his face. You didn't have to do that. I know, she replied, echoing his own words from the night before. That's why I did. They both laughed softly, the kind of laugh that comes from exhaustion and relief tangled together. For a moment, the tension eased. Then Amelia's expression changed, focused, sharp. She was staring past him toward a storage alcove. Do you smell that? Ethan turned. A faint hiss cut through the air. Barely audible, but he knew that sound instantly. Compressed gas. He strode to the wall, scanning the row of oxygen tanks. One was vibrating slightly, the valve coupling not seated correctly. He crouched, tightened the joint with instinctive precision, then checked the gauge. Pressure normalized. Loose connection, he said. Could have caused a leak. The nurse on duty hurried over, pale. That tank was slated for the next patient. You might have just saved a life. Ethan exhaled hard, his adrenaline draining. For the first time since arriving here, he felt useful again. Not helpless, not waiting, just himself. Amelia smiled. Looks like you're still fixing things. Guess it's what I do, he said quietly. Machines, systems, sometimes people. The nurse returned to thank him again. When she left, Amelia handed Ethan something small and folded. It was the same piece of paper Lena had written 3 years ago, the one Amelia had carried in her wallet. You should have this, she said. Ethan opened it carefully. The handwriting, his wife's loops and flourishes, trembled under his fingertips. You don't have to be alone. His vision blurred. She knew, he whispered. She knew I'd end up right here. She knew you'd need to be reminded, Amelia said gently. And maybe I needed the reminder too. She paused, then added, Tomorrow, when he's better, I want to talk to you about something. A project I'm starting. He looked up, wary. Project? A way to make sure no parent ever sits alone in a hallway again. No vending machine dinners. No waiting without answers. Real advocates. Real help. Ethan stared at her, the folded note trembling in his hands. You'd do all that because of 6 words? Because they worked, she said simply. At that moment, a nurse poked her head out from Caleb's room. He's stable again, she said with a smile. Resting easy. Ethan pressed the note to his chest, breathing out a sound that was almost a prayer. Amelia placed a steady hand on his shoulder. You fixed a valve tonight. Tomorrow let's fix the rest. He nodded, tears catching in the corner of his eyes. For the first time in years, he felt something he'd nearly forgotten. Hope quietly humming back to life. 6 months later, Spring sunlight poured through the new glass atrium of the Riverside Medical Center. The air smelled faintly of coffee and lemon polish, but beneath it lingered something warmer, hope made tangible. Ethan adjusted his tie, still not used to the feel of polished shoes instead of steel-toed boots. His palms were rough, calloused as ever, but his name badge, Ethan Miller, Parent Advocate, gleamed under the light. Across the atrium, a small crowd gathered near a plaque covered by a velvet cloth. Kids held balloons, nurses carried trays of cocoa cups, and reporters set up tripods. Amelia stood near the podium, calm as ever, her gray scarf pinned neatly over a navy dress. When she saw Ethan, she smiled. Not the polite kind, but the quiet, genuine smile of someone who'd been changed by the same fire. Caleb tugged on his sleeve, dressed in his best shirt. The wristband from that long night now turned into a charm on his backpack. "Dad, is she going to tell the story?" Ethan crouched. "Maybe part of it. The rest belongs to us." The microphone crackled as Amelia stepped forward. "When my husband Richard founded this hospital's community wing," she began, "he believed that healing isn't only medical, it's human. Tonight, we dedicate a space that honors that truth." She gestured to the cloth. "We call it the Quiet Chair Project." The covering fell away, revealing a warm corner near the ER entrance. 2 comfortable chairs, a soft blanket folded between them, a shelf of children's books, a kettle for cocoa, and a small sign that read, "No one waits alone." Beneath it hung a framed drawing, Caleb's, the same one he'd made years ago of his parents holding hands under a bright blue sky. The crowd clapped softly, many wiping tears. Amelia's voice steadied. "This corner is named after 2 people who showed me that kindness is not charity, and that courage often wears grease on its hands. Grant and Lena's quiet corner." Ethan froze, his wife's name beside Richard Grant's. It felt right. 2 souls who never met, now joined by what they'd left behind. Compassion carried forward. Amelia beckoned him to join her. "Mr. Miller," she said, "would you like to say a few words?" He shook his head at first, but the crowd's gentle encouragement pushed him forward. He took the mic awkwardly, cleared his throat. "I'm not used to speeches," he began. "Engines, yes. Paperwork, no." Laughter rippled through the room. "But I know this. Months ago I sat outside those doors thinking my son might die, and that I had failed everyone I loved. Then someone sat beside me and said 6 words that changed everything." He turned toward Amelia. "You don't have to be alone." A hush fell. "Turns out, that sentence didn't just patch me up, it built this." He gestured toward the quiet corner. "Because if you've ever waited in a hallway, not knowing if someone you love will make it, you know how heavy silence can be. This space is where silence becomes company." He looked at Caleb, then back to the crowd. "Machines need oil. People need each other. So thank you for giving this mechanic a reason to keep fixing things." The applause rose softly at first, then swelled until even the nurses were clapping. Amelia stepped forward, placing a hand over his. "Richard would be proud," she said, "and so would Lena." "Maybe they're watching," he said quietly, "and laughing at how long it took us to catch up." Outside, the spring breeze lifted through the open atrium doors. Caleb darted toward the courtyard, waving a small kite shaped like a bluebird. "Dad, look!" he called, the kite rising higher with every gust. Ethan and Amelia walked out together to watch. "He's gotten strong," she said. "He's got his mother's lungs now," Ethan replied. She smiled at that. They stood in comfortable silence, sunlight catching the silver strands in her hair and the faint grease still under his nails. "You ever think about what's next?" she asked. "Fixing engines doesn't sound like enough anymore." "Maybe fixing people does," he said. "Or systems," she teased. one bolt at a time. Caleb ran back to them, handing Amelia the kite string. "You hold it now," he said. She took it carefully, the paper bird trembling between her fingers. Ethan watched her steady it against the wind, her eyes bright. "You're good at this," he said. "Comes with practice," she answered, learning to let things rise without letting them go. Later, as the sun dipped behind the hospital's glass facade, the new plaque caught the light. "For those who keep things running." Below it, the pocket watch with RG's initials had been restored, set permanently at 2:17 a.m., the moment Ethan first heard 6 words that rewrote his life. The clock no longer kept time, but it didn't need to. Time had done its job. Now kindness would keep everything moving. In the end, it wasn't money, medicine, or miracles that changed their lives. It was 6 simple words whispered under harsh hospital lights. "You don't have to be alone." From that night on, Ethan and Amelia turned one quiet act of compassion into something countless families could lean on. Because sometimes, the smallest kindness can fix what the world forgets to care for. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who still believes in second chances. And don't forget to follow Soul-Stirring Tales for more stories that remind us what being human truly means.